This is the Infatuasian podcast, a show where we get together to talk with people about Asian things that we love. This is Curtis, and on today's episode, we'll be talking with my former student Kevin about how he took a hobby and turned it into a multi-million-dollar company before he turned 24. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the pod. We are having kind of a different episode today. I was going to hang out with Kevin anyway, so I said, hey, you want to come on the pod? And Kevin is someone that I wanted to have on the pod because he's done a lot of interesting things and always good to chat with. But we were just supposed to just hang out and catch up, but I figured I'll shove a microphone in his face and we'll talk for a little bit. So, hey, Kevin, thanks for coming along.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
We are old friends from back in the day. Kevin was a student of mine. When was that? You were a sophomore, so that was 2008?
Yeah, 2008. That's right.
Yeah. So you're a student of mine, AP Bio, and then you graduated and went on to UC San Diego. And, well, actually, let's go back. So you're a student of mine. You came up to me and said, hey, have you ever heard of freshwater shrimp?
Uh-huh.
And I said, not really. And you said, you said they're pretty easy to grow, and you can breed them, and you can sell them. That was the thing you were interested in. So how did that start? You just got into it and did it in your garage, or?
Yeah. I actually don't remember that conversation, so you'll have to fill in my memory gaps. But so a really good friend of mine, he was actually the best man at my wedding. His name is William Ng, and I was hanging out with him after Chinese school on a Saturday or Sunday, and he brought me, he took me to a fish store, which was Aqua Forest, and he dropped like $200 there. And, we were 14, 15 at the time, right? Yeah. So that was a lot of money. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? And so he was using stones and driftwood to create these beautiful sceneries of nature. And literally every weekend after Chinese school, we would drop by Aqua Forest and he would drop $50. I'm like, what is this? What are you doing here? So I had a little dinky plastic fish tank, 5 gallons at home with goldfish. They died. So it was and so he gave me all the stuff and said, hey, Kevin, why don't you use this and try it out? I used it, I tried it out. I bought some guppies. And they bred in my tank, and in that moment I was hooked. And then I looked at what are the most challenging things? It's like collecting Pokemon cards, right? What is the rarest and coolest thing? At the time, it was called crystal red shrimps.
Yeah.
And there were, at least relatively speaking, there were very few people in the U.S. breeding them and selling them. Most of it was imported. And so I, had my first job at the time. And so I was like, okay, I have a few bucks to throw around. So I bought my first crystal red shrimp and I tried to breed them. And I read everything from page 1 to page 10 of Google and kind of noted down anything that, occurred more than twice and try to follow it to the T. Because even $50 to me at the time was a lot of money, and that's how much it costed to get 5 shrimps.
Right, $10 each.
Yeah, $10 each. and so I was really careful with it, and it worked out. A few months later, I had some baby shrimps, and then it just kind of compounded from there. I got 1 tank, and then I got, and then at the same time, my sister bought a house, and with a massive garage. I think you've been there. Yeah, you've been there. And I set up probably at my peak, probably 14 or 15 tanks in my garage. And most of them were breeding different types of shrimp. And I remember the first time that I had those baby shrimps, I posted it on aquabid.com Friday afternoon, and for sale, just to see if I could recoup my investment, right? And all of them sold within. So each batch you get 30 babies, right? 25 maybe will survive. And so I listed 20 of them for sale, and all of them sold, and it cleared over $1,000. that was Sunday night I checked and all of them sold. And so I just, started packing them up and selling them. And I think that's probably the time when I shared that with you.
And you realize, man, this is like printing money.
Yeah. Well, it was. It literally was at the time. Yeah.
So for the audience out there, don't worry. We're going to get into this a little bit, but we're going to talk to Kevin about two of his passions. One of them is aquatics and aquaculture, and the other one is startups and entrepreneurship. So you can see at age 14, you can see the gears turning in Kevin's head a little bit. Like, man, if I could scale this up, or you're just starting to think about how to make a business out of this as a teenager.
Yeah.
And so in high school, you do a little more of this. We do a little bit at school, not very successfully, but we do a little bit at school, and then you graduate and you go to San Diego. And how long did it take you to set up the aquariums in your apartment? Was that like first week you started to set up the business down in San Diego?
Yeah, so actually I had some hesitancy like before I went to college. Like do I even want to go to college? Because or maybe just go to so my sister's house was like a 15-minute walk from City College. And I was like, I could just go to community college, keep doing this thing. It was doing pretty darn well, at least like for an 18-year-old. For an 18-year-old, it was doing very, very well. And so I seriously considered that. But I don't know, internally in my guts, like I knew, going to college is probably the right thing to like expose myself to a different environment. And like I got into literally the school that I wanted to go to in San Diego. It's so beautiful, in La Jolla. So I went to UCSD. And actually the first year I really didn't do much. I was just hanging out, screwing around, enjoyed the college life. Actually, the courses were really challenging for me. It wasn't until I went to college that I realized how like underprepared I was for college. And so I was really focused on like really struggling to get B's in school, my first year of college. And I like did decent in high school too, And so, and then my second year, that was when Eric Suin went to UCSD as well. And so the plan there was to like move in together and like do this thing that we were doing in high school together all over again. And so, we, my second year, we started like, we moved into an apartment together.
Put up some racks.
We retrofitted one of our closets, put up a couple of racks, and put in 4 fish tanks. And then I took over my then girlfriend, current wife's garage at the time. She lived in a townhome, and like put up multiple racks. And like we probably had, I don't know, 600 gallons of water there in her garage, and started selling fish online.
So meanwhile, this is happening, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's next? Or where did the idea for ADI come from? Now, ADI stands for Aqua Design Innovations.
Yeah.
And just give me an elevator pitch for ADI.
Well, so what it started out as was all these people that were like buying shrimp from me and like trying to set up fish tanks, etc. So it started out as a few people here and there asking us, hey, like, how can you do this in my house, right? So it was going to individual people's homes and setting up like these aquariums for them in their homes. So that's what it started out as. And then it evolved about 10 times to different things, to like selling fish out of our closets in college. And then eventually to the EcoCube. Which, so I was at UCSD, I was doing research at one of the largest aquaponics farms in the US, right there in San Diego and Vista. They were raising tilapia and using that same water, pumping that water into a plant bed system where they grew lettuce, a lot of leafy greens. And it was a nonprofit, but they sold to like high-end restaurants, etc. And through that research project, so I studied ecology, behavior, and evolution. And a lot of that was due to my experience at Gal and with you, Mr. Shin, and doing AP Bio, and then my interest in aquariums and how to create like a sustainable ecosystem within an aquarium. And this research project came up where we were measuring the inputs and outputs of the ecosystem. And what we found was that particular system grew basically about twice the amount of plants in half the amount of space, no pesticides or fertilizers.
Yeah.
And this was right in the midst of the drought that we had in California. And it was just like crazy to me. Like, why are we growing food in dirt?
Yeah.
When we can do that? That was one revelation. The second one was what I've been doing in an aquarium has been aquaponics the whole time, except the plants grew underwater and injected CO2 into the water. But instead, we can put the plants above water, give it unlimited access to CO2.
Yeah.
And it absorbs all the nutrients from tilapia. And so the whole idea of the EcoCube was to take all of that and put it into a beautiful and familiar way. Like, everyone knows what an aquarium is, but no one knows what an aquaponic system is, or very few people did at the time.
Or they're huge, they're like 300 gallon, 3,000 gallon, really, really big. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And very ugly and kind of piecemeal together.
Yeah.
So with my backgrounds in like aquariums, and at the same time, I was working for the largest aquarium LED manufacturer in the US, Current USA. And so I got some like manufacturing contacts, and I saw like how well their business was doing. And I was like, well, I can productize this and put it into a beautiful way and compelling way. And then that was the EcoCube, which was basically a beautiful desktop aquarium that uses basil or green onions to filter the aquarium water. So you never have to change the aquarium water. And as the plants grew, the water would get cleaner and cleaner.
Now, you just sketched this out on paper, or, on the napkin in the garage idea, or how did this come to you?
Yeah, so it's, I had a friend, a really good friend to this day, and he's actually the founder of LaunchBoom, which is the company that I work for now.
Okay.
And his name is Tom Dodorian, and he went to UCSD as well. He was just starting out his video production business called The Label Creative, which eventually evolved into LaunchBoom, which is the company that I now work for.
Okay.
And he was doing video production for this gentleman named Drew Canoli, which was he's very well known in the affiliate marketing and digital marketing world. And he had this branded page called Juicing Vegetables, and with like millions and millions of followers. Tom said, hey, Kevin, why don't you put this whole aquaponics thing into like a package, and I will get Drew to sell the crap out of it. Because they're all into like sustainability and juicing vegetables, etc. And it was meant to be a info product. So here's a guide on how to retrofit like an AquaClear into a aquaponics filter or whatever. So I put together the guide, and it looked really bad.
It's like a Frankenstein, like a 10-gallon with like some pipes coming out of it.
Exactly. Okay. It looked really, really bad. It lacked that like sex appeal, right? Yeah. That needs to come in a product. So it
had this science classroom kind of look to it, but not office. You're not going to put this on your desk at the office.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. So I brought on a couple engineers to help me like 3D print some prototypes. And then the next idea was to like take that info product and turn it into like a prototype that functioned and looked good. And then I could take it to the company that I worked for, Current USA, license it to them, and have them distribute it with Drew Canoli, etc.
Yeah. And you're like 20 years old at this time?
Yeah, I was like about 20.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And so I tried to do that. So it was a filter with a aquaponics filter with a LED above the filter. And so I was like, yeah, they're selling LEDs already. Why would they not sell like the filter with the aquarium LED? Like, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
But they were just doing so well. And it was like a 5-person operation running the largest, aquarium LED manufacturing brand in the US. And it didn't make sense for them to like take on this risk in a new project and invest $40,000 into a mold in a product that may or may not work.
And they don't make tanks. That's not their thing.
Yeah. And they did not make aquariums either. So now at the prototype that worked, it was beautiful, but no distribution, right? And so, well, what's the next step? And then at that time, Kickstarter and Indiegogo was taking off, right? Yeah. And you saw all these like subpar products raising millions of dollars. And so I was like, I can do that. So I brought in my buddy Tom. I said, hey, you run a video agency. Like, you want to create a video for me? I'll put together everything else and let's launch this thing together. So we did that. And that was the first crowdfunding campaign. We raised $83,000.
It's 3 of you this time. It's you, Eric, and Mark? Or
It was, no, just myself and Eric.
Okay, just 2 of you. Okay.
Yeah, just 2 of us. And then we paid some like engineers on the side to like help us with the 3D printing, etc.
Right, it was just 2 of you basically.
Just 2 of us, yeah. And so we launched it, and it far exceeded our expectations. So the goal was $39,000 because that was the initial estimates to pay for the molds and the initial order to cover the all the pre-orders from Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So we ended up raising $83,000. But we ended up spending like $150,000 for the tooling and to manufacture the product.
And this was floated by family and friends, or?
The $83,000 was like real customers, right? That are pre-ordering. Obviously, there's some friends and family that ordered on Kickstarter as well, but it was mostly just strangers that believed in the product and the vision and of bringing aquaponics to the world.
Yeah. But how do you make up the difference between 150 and 80? Like,
I raised money from private investors.
Okay.
Yeah, and then a lot of credit cards as well. In between that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it could have gone really wrong. It could have taken a real left turn there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you had a prototype.
Yep.
You got some cash.
Yep.
Well, sort of.
Sort of. Yeah. I thought I had more than enough, but it was about half of what I needed. Yeah.
Yeah. And then now you got to manufacture.
Yeah.
So how'd you do that?
So I interviewed a bunch of different factories and manufacturers that created products in the space. I worked for a aquarium LED manufacturer.
Right.
So they made some introductions. Alibaba was a really great resource. I think it still is. And I asked, actually, so I dwindled it down to like 2 factories and candidates. And I reached out to a family friend that ran a factory in China, a very successful one, tell me like vet these people. And I worked with these manufacturers to iterate on my prototype. So that was sort of our dating phase, right?
Yeah. So when you say work with them, you're on the phone or you're flying to China?
Skype in the very beginning. That was like the preferred method of communication then. I don't even think Zoom existed yet.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So Skype, and then I did the Kickstarter, and now I had the money, right? Or at least I thought I had the money, and then I picked up my bags and flew to China to meet with them, etc. So yeah. And
you're doing all this in Mandarin? You're just going off of your language skills that you have from high school?
So I thank my parents still every single day for forcing me to go to Chinese school every weekend for 12 years.
Yeah.
No, I had a translator with me
Okay.
most of the time, and mainly because...
You don't want to get anything wrong.
Well, I don't want to get anything wrong, and I noticed that when I try to speak Chinese, they would look down at me because I spoke like a 8-year-old, I'm pretty good for the first 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah. And then when you get into the manufacturing terms, etc., that was when like they realized, or I talked like a kid basically.
Yeah.
And so even when my Chinese got a lot better, like years into manufacturing, and I spent 6 months cumulatively in China, etc., I still had a translator with me when I was talking to new people. Now, Jasmine, our main contact at the EcoCube final assembling plants, I would speak to her in Mandarin, and she taught me a bunch of Mandarin. And that's how I improved in my Chinese.
Yeah, and whining and dining, you can talk about the weather and the food and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes down to the millimeters and nano things here and there, you gotta really get it right.
Yeah.
All right, so cool. So how many was the first run? You had how many backers? You had
700 units was the first run. I forget the number of backers, but it was probably slightly less than that. 600 something probably.
Yeah.
And then I rented a warehouse in San Diego, the smallest warehouse I could find It was just shy of 600 square feet, and prepared for the product to come in. There were a lot of ups and downs with creating the product that I was totally oblivious to. Happy to dive into that too, if you would like.
Yeah.
And then the product finally came in. It came in November of 2014. And I remember product arrived and it looked beautiful. It was great. I was so proud of it. I unloaded the container myself. And we took out a couple units for QC, and we found that some of the units had pumps that created a rattling noise. So prior to it being assembled, all the pumps were tested in water for noise and for function. But we realized that some of the pumps, when placed into the housing of the filter, would then create a slight rattling noise. And so we ended up during Thanksgiving and throughout Thanksgiving, etc., with a couple friends that were kind enough to help out. We took apart every single EcoCube, tested it in water, dried it out, disassembled the ones that rattled, reassembled the ones with new pumps, and then shipped it out. And we made it out. We shipped everything out just before Christmas.
So when was the Kickstarter?
The Kickstarter campaign was November of 2013.
Okay, so almost about a year, exactly.
A year, yeah, to take it from. So when I had a functional prototype, I thought I was done.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I was done. So it's a functional prototype. I bring it to the factory. They order raw materials from one end, goes through the machines, comes out the other end, perfect. Right. That was my
right.
perception of manufacturing.
Yeah.
That is not the case. That is not the case. We ended up redesigning the entire product from the ground up for manufacturing. Yeah.
In China.
In China. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just in hotels or
Yeah. I was in very cheap motels. Some of them with broken AC in the summer, which was rough. Yeah.
And you're like, I got to get this done before fall quarter starts so I can get back to class and stuff. And,
yeah, that's right.
Wow.
That's right.
So I think at this time you were also doing some incubator work in San Diego, like hanging out with other like-minded people.
Yeah, so when I said my first year I was screwing around, it wasn't necessarily true. I, was pretty involved with like the entrepreneurial community in San Diego. I ended up helping run the largest pitch competition in California. It was the $100,000 Entrepreneur Challenge at UC San Diego. So I helped coordinate those events, and then I was pretty plugged into that community. I worked with a few people to start something called Pathways Ventures, which was like an undergraduate incubator that provided funding and idea development and support to people wanting to start businesses at UCSD. And it eventually became like absorbed to the Rady School of Management at UC San Diego. And so, yeah, I was pretty involved in those communities and organizing those events as well.
If you had to do it again, would you go more the business route in college, or things just worked out doing the science and then having the interest in business later?
Yeah, I would say, and I say this to most people now, I would say whatever I studied in school really didn't matter. I would have chosen, if I were to do it again, I wouldn't do anything different, obviously, or honestly, because I think everything worked out really well.
Right.
But if I were like talking to someone else, I would say I would choose the major that is like the easiest, that consumes the least amount of time, so that you have the time to like really do like extracurricular, like we call it extracurricular, but I would say like more like hands-on things that will actually apply to after university, after college.
Yeah.
And honestly, I look back and like none of the things I learned in class ever mattered, but all these relationships that I built with professors, with Tom, with Drew Canoli, with, all those things is what turned into I have a job now, my dream job now, because of that I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that networking, it's the learning how to talk to people, learning how to share a vision, that kind of stuff.
Well, I have like this theory that if college was just like maybe like one class, right? Like maybe like just on life, like on finances, how to manage your finances, how to file taxes,
Yeah, yeah.
like that's worth the money, like worth the, college tuition. And then
Yeah.
everything else should just be like socials and like projects, like maybe like trying to start a Kickstarter campaign or
Right.
trying to do that research project at aquaponics farm. And that's what universities should be creating opportunities for students for, because like aside from like a handful of people that actually became doctors,
Right.
no one else utilized anything that they paid for and learned in classrooms that I know of.
Yeah, except for teachers.
Yeah, that's right. Teachers as well.
Well, and that's one of the, we don't say this to the kids at the time in high school,
Right.
but high school and I think undergrad for a lot too is basically we're killing time until you grow up, right? We got to keep you out of trouble,
Right.
until and at the same time, we do these group projects, you do things to socialize people. People have to learn how to work together, but a lot of it is just waiting for you to grow up.
Yeah, yeah.
And so high school, for a lot of it, I mean, I'm glad that you learned some science in high school and whatnot. I'm always excited when someone gets excited about science. But for 90% of the kids, what I teach is going to be forgotten.
Yeah.
But it's a year of their life where they socialize with each other, and it's a year of their life where they learned how to learn.
Yeah.
Learned if you don't know the answer, you can find the answer. That kind of stuff, like you said, is probably more valuable than, the steps of the Krebs cycle or something like that, right?
Exactly. Or just being disciplined to like sit down
Sure.
to study and do things that you don't want to, because like that's what you need to win the game of life.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you've taken 0 business classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
I don't
economics once or something.
I don't remember actually. I might have taken 1 or 2, but I don't remember.
But almost everything you learned about running a business, you taught yourself or YouTube or...
Yeah, it was mostly like Google and YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, they got everything now. You
Yeah.
want to learn how to code, you can learn how to code. You want to learn how to open a business, you can learn how to open a business.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't want to downplay college or high school, but at the same time, it is really... Speaking of incubator, right? It's a time where you're just kind of growing as a human being. You're learning about yourself.
Right.
You're learning how to be an adult. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so I don't know who the audiences are listening to this, but if it's like your current students, I would say like, definitely like, especially when you're in high school, I think you have to get good grades, because I think, and I'm glad I like really forced myself to sit down, even though I really didn't enjoy it, to like study and at least get B's in high school. Because then it put me at UCSD around all these incredible people and all these incredible opportunities. I think it's very important to like do well in high school academically. I think sort of my hypotheses that I was talking about earlier is more toward like university and college, being able to like focus on like having a job. And like I always had a job in high school or in high school, but also college. And like organizing all these events and all these and building these relationships that, I don't want to put it this way, but for lack of like better, terms, like they're paying massive dividends, 10 years and probably 60 years down the road, I expect them to. Yeah.
Like the way I put it is, if someone comes in freshman year and says, well, I don't need biology because I want to be an artist, or I don't need biology because I want to be a chef, and I just tell them, you want to have options.
Right.
And good grades gives you options.
Yes.
It's like, if you get into Harvard and you don't want to go, fine, don't go,
Yeah.
But if you have those kind of grades, there's so many more opportunities for you than if you have straight D's in high school and then all you can do is whatever minimum wage job or trade school or whatever. But if you have good grades and at the end of high school you realize, I do want to be a chef, that's fine, you know? But you still have options that are open to you that you might not.
Yeah, and at that age, I think I thought, and we all thought, like we knew a lot more than we actually did, right?
We all do, yeah.
So Yeah, like it's okay to change your mind later on. And you're right. You want to give yourself the opportunity to change your mind and do different things. And I think one of the big things too about like grades in high school is it just gives you confidence to know that, hey, I'm actually a capable person and I stack up well against my peers, right?
Yeah.
And it's very measurable. And the rest of life is, I feel, has been like less and less measurable in that way. There's money, but like there's only really like so much to money where you could measure like your success and your fulfillments. But like, I feel like with like good grades, I would always like walk out feeling pretty good about myself that like I forced myself to have the discipline to sit down and study for the exam that I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's kind of like, it's not always a one-to-one relationship between effort and reward, but studying is one of those things that there's a little bit of a correlation.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, there's always the kid who says, I studied so hard, I still got a D. There's always that. But in life, it doesn't always work out where effort equals reward. But in high school, generally it works that way.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
All right. So you got 700 units shipped out, and then now you're going to order round 2.
Yeah, but I didn't have the money to.
Okay.
Right. So because I already went like way over budget, raised financing from investors to like cover the fulfillment, credit cards to cover the fulfillments of the first order. But I got all this great feedback from the product.
Right.
Like the reason why it took a year was because like I was anal about making the product perfect. And it was perfect. And so we got incredible feedback from the customers, and I realized there was room for improvement, both on the product development and manufacturing side to like save on costs, but also from and like they're not mutually exclusive. It can be cheaper and better for the consumer.
Oh, okay.
And so I iterated on it, made a version 2, relaunched it April of 2015, raised $750,000, so almost 10x'd the initial raise, and sold 7,000 units.
Oh, wow.
And that was really the inflection points.
Where you were like, okay, I can do this.
yeah. This is a real business.
Yeah. No, 7,000 over the course of a certain amount of time, or
it was just that campaign, so it was about 60 days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I knew that if I had inventory at that point,
you could sell more.
Yeah, I would sell a lot more. Yeah.
All right. So you start bringing on some employees.
Yeah, still not yet, because with a physical products business, and this is what most people don't realize, and there's product costs, there's obviously tooling costs, and then there's think about all the traveling to China that to get it done. It was like probably a solid like 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And China's relatively cheap compared to like the Bay Area, but it's still like it ends up being a few $1,000s here and there. And most of the funds raised go towards making the product.
Right.
So you don't end up with very much at the end of it. Like we might have like ended up with a little bit more, and we were able to order some additional inventory and start selling on our own website.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're not paying yourself yet.
No, we're not. I'm not paying myself yet. I might have paid myself for rents like $1,000 a month or something like that.
Comp yourself a meal.
Yeah, exactly. Comp myself a meal. But that was it. And then, which was crazy, because at that point, 2015, a lot of my friends had graduated and started getting jobs.
And you're working 70 hours a week.
Yeah, making nothing.
Right.
And so, we brought on maybe a couple like part-time employees, and they were paid more than I was, and to help like, handle the website and some communication with China, etc. But luckily then, like, we had continuous revenue from our websites.
Okay.
And that helped a lot.
Yeah. So walk us through the next couple of years. So you're running this, and then you had some other products come out.
Yeah, so we basically had about one new product launch per year. That was what was like sustainable for myself and the business without taking away too much from the core business, which is now the e-commerce website. So we were generating sales from the e-commerce website, and then we would launch a new product. And there were, quite a few new products that I'm not going to get into now, but we iterated based on customer feedback and just gave them more and more of the products that they wanted. And with every new product launch, our customer base would grow because we got more exposure, and then our website sales would grow as a result of that. So we kind of just grew organically that way. And I would say the biggest beneficiary is probably Facebook.
Yeah.
Because, that's where you spend all your advertising dollars.
Really?
Yeah. I think there was like a metric a couple years ago. It's a little different now, but basically like for every consumer product business that raises, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars here in the Bay Area, like Allbirds, right? That's a brand that everyone knows.
Yeah.
They, for every $1 million that they raise from venture capital, about 30% of that goes to Facebook.
Wow. Okay.
Because that's how you grow visibility and get your brand in front of people. And
Get to people.
Yeah.
Huh. All right, Facebook, hear that? We're shouting you out. So hopefully the algorithm will hear us talking about it, put us up on the feature page. So you're a manufacturer, you do a couple runs, and you got some new products coming out.
Yeah, things were humming.
Things are humming along. And what year are we in here?
Let's fast forward a little bit to like 2019.
Yeah, okay.
So we had a bunch of products out. Things are humming. We brought on Mark, who was another one of your AP Bio students. Heck yeah. And he really handled a lot of the engineering and coordination with China. And, he was doing it part-time still, right? It was crazy. I set out a dream to build $1 million a year business, crushed it, surpassed it, and you still can't pay to, still can't afford to pay someone like a full-time engineer, right? So physical products business is a tough business to be in, but
the revenue's there.
The revenue is there.
The profit is
the profit. Like, you look at, so the chairman of our board was he ran the largest furniture retailer on the West Coast. It's not in the Bay Area, so most people in the Bay probably haven't heard of it. It's called More Furniture, M-O-R. And he goes, well, he was very, very nice and showed me a lot of numbers behind the business. He goes, well, what do you think? What do you think? The company was doing $350 million a year. What do you think their profit was?
350 mil.
350
revenue.
Million. Yeah, revenue. 6,000 employees.
Oh, I don't know. 10 mil.
That's a pretty good guess. Yeah, it was about 5%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, about 5%. So it's pretty standard in physical products businesses if you're doing like 20%, you're crushing it.
Really?
You're crushing it. Yeah. So things were humming. It was going. And we, crushed that $1 million mark that I was aiming for when I first started the business. And at that point I had been doing it for 6-7 years, right? And I got engaged to my current wife, and like kids were in the future, and so it was like, well, like, what is the next move, right?
Yeah. And
I felt like I gotten everything that I was looking for out of ADI when I first started it. The goal was to, again, get it to over $1 million a year in sales. We like doubled that, right? Built all these relationships, had, these awesome investors that are still, one of them officiated my wedding,
Okay, all right.
So I think, so to continue working on it, I think it would have had diminishing returns. And so we got together, put together a plan to exit the business. So we ultimately exit the business January 22nd of 2020. So it was months and months of work to get there. And then January 26th was when COVID broke out in China, or when they officially announced the breakout.
There had been rumors.
Yeah.
Stuff.
So January 26th was when like China logistics, manufacturing, everything fell apart.
Yeah.
And so I was very fortunate, got out just in time. and I took some time off, and I've always wanted to live out of a van.
Right. Yeah. Nomad life.
Yeah. So I rented a van and I drove up and down the coast for a week and or 10 days, and then it was like just to give myself. I didn't talk to anyone the whole 10 days. You know, aside from like someone checking me out at the grocery store, right?
Right.
And so I had a lot of time to myself, was just trying to like figure out what was next. And like, I just felt like overflowed with like, with like gratitude for all the experiences that I had, that I got to like do all these things and travel to China a bunch and meet all these incredible people, great partners that I still work with to this day. Like, even though we don't use our manufacturer, there are a few companies that I advise and I work with that use her for manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so it was really about like thinking about what the next thing was going to be. And then I went to Hawaii for a few weeks with my current wife, my fiance at the time, and got a little bit like more clear-minded. And I just kind of chilled for a few months. And then because of COVID, the business that I now work for, LaunchBoom, was taken off like a rocket ship. So all these businesses are flushed with cash because of, the EIDL. So I think emergency loans from the SBA that are basically free money. And they're still giving it out, actually. And so now companies are like, well, what do we do with this cash? Like, let's launch new products. And that's what LaunchBoom does. It's in the name, LaunchBoom. And LaunchBoom started out as Label Creative, right? And they created the video for my first two crowdfunding campaigns. But after they saw how lucrative crowdfunding was, they pivoted their entire business into crowdfunding. So remember in 2015, I said that was like sort of the inflection point of EcoCube and ADI. It was also the inflection point for LaunchBoom. Because after that campaign, I literally had one person every single week hitting me up, asking me like, hey, who helped you? Who can help me, etc. And I sent them all to LaunchBoom. And so, or it was, again, Label Creative at the time. And then they rebranded the company to LaunchBoom and focused exclusively on launching crowdfunding campaigns. And now they're the largest crowdfunding agency in the world. And every, company looking to launch a product through crowdfunding, they contact LaunchBoom. And so
even like two dudes in the garage, like with an idea, can go to LaunchBoom, or
they can go to LaunchBoom. But most of the people that LaunchBoom works with are established business,
a little further along,
and fund it.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because there's like, for a company like LaunchBoom, there are upfront costs, right? Like we have 60 people on payroll to help people just on that. So most like two dudes in a garage, unless they, had prior business experience or funding, etc., they wouldn't work with LaunchBoom. So, so that's, so opportunity came up at LaunchBoom, and I was really, really great friends with the executive team, and the company was growing like crazy. I think in the beginning of 2020, they had 20 something people. And by the end of the year, we had 60. So I came on and became the product launch director at LaunchBoom. So I oversee about 60% of all product launches. And I work with clients that I, like myself a few years ago, to give them a little bit foresight into like the hell that they might be walking into with manufacturing, logistics. I mean, we ship to 36 countries all over the world. I sort of categorize my experience with ADI and EcoCube into $300,000 mistakes. One in manufacturing, one in fulfillment, and the third one in sales. So sales and marketing. Now I'm able to like leverage all the, I feel like all my experiences leading up until this point has prepared me for this role that I'm in. So that's my job now, my role now. put together strategic plans with different businesses to help them launch new products successfully through crowdfunding.
Yeah. Is it as fun as doing your own thing, or?
Oh, it's more fun.
Is it?
Well, because you
So
get
less
to do,
risk.
yeah, you get to do all the stuff and talk about all the stuff, and other people are doing the work. Right?
Yeah. So it's like you have 60 companies, that you're working with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. It's honestly like my dream job. And I couldn't have imagined things working out any better.
Yeah. And it's like you can't write a resume, to tailor it for that. You had to live it. You couldn't just go and say, oh, this is, in high school, this is what I'm going to do to get here. You
Right.
had no idea how to get there, right? And you just had to do it.
Yeah, zero idea. And for everyone listening that like hasn't heard that Steve Jobs commencement speech, highly, highly recommend it. It still gets me all juiced up. And one of the things he says is like, only in hindsight can you connect the dots, right? It's very hard to connect the dots moving forward.
Yeah.
And honestly, most of the like paths where you can connect the dots moving forward, it is so overly saturated already. There's because everyone already knows about it, right? Like we can talk about becoming a doctor, becoming a lawyer, becoming an accountant, etc. They're so saturated that the industries don't necessarily need to fight for talent.
Yeah.
Because so many people are pursuing that path. Hey, if you don't work out, fine. I have 20 other grads coming this way. And so you tend to have much less upside in those career paths.
But the path less traveled is the one. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like the path less traveled, and you might go, what is that? Well, just like do the next thing that presents itself to you.
Yeah. How do you feel about failure? I mean, you work with a lot of people, so I'm sure some of them fail.
Oh,
I mean, is that something that is just part of the business, and you don't be afraid of it and just work your way through it?
Yeah. So there's like a smart way to fail, right? For sure. Like failure is imminent. Like it's, but the key is to not fail twice, and like to fail cheap and fast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or not fail twice in the same mistake, I should say.
Yeah.
And in terms of failing cheap and fast, that's what's like Launch Boom does. So we have this whole program called Test Boom, where for even the largest brands in the world that you and I would both recognize, we have this thing called Test Boom. And we spend a $2,500 test advertising budget to test and validate and mitigate risk and isolate different variables like images, headlines, price points, etc.
Yeah.
To get you to a point where you can see the data and go, okay, well, do I want to put more than $2,500 in budget behind it?
Knowing that most of it will fail.
or that there's room for improvement. Hey, you don't have enough margin to scale this product, right? So you need to fix your margins and have higher gross profit margins to cover the cost of operating this business unit, as an example. So yeah, it gives you, or like this audience isn't a good fit, or this product isn't a good fit for this audience. And we're able to like, back to like the Facebook advertising thing. It's such an incredible tool. We're able to, get a product in front of tens of thousands of people for $2,500.
Yeah.
So what I tell people like is what we do at LaunchBoom is we take focus groups to the 21st century, right? Because a lot of our larger clients, they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for these agencies to like put together a focus group,
right?
To talk about their product and tell. Well, what we do is we put out the product as if it was done, even if it's not, and we ask them, do you want to? And we educate them about the product. We send them email sequences, etc., and then we ask them, are you willing to give us your credit card information and $1 to reserve this product at a discounted price? And we see enough of those, then it means there's something real special.
Proof of concept. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about like mitigating your risk so that if all your downside is capped at $2,500, everything else is upside, right?
Right. Yeah.
And this isn't just for advertising and finding product market fits. It's like I look at the same thing for like making investments and the companies that I work with and I advise. It's the same principle that comes up over and over again. And I think I sort of applied the same thing for my career as well. You know, like what was the downside in like starting this EcoCube thing? Well, the downside is like a public failure, but the upside is I have $80,000 in funding from, you know, in a pre-order campaign that'll finance all my first batch of inventory and help me learn all of this.
Yeah. All right, so working now. You have that itch to start your own thing again, or start to build something from scratch? You still have that itch?
Yeah, so I alluded to this a couple of times, but in addition to my day job, I advise 3 other companies, and I also make investments on the side. So that, and then also in my day job, I'm launching new products,
right?
Like every single week.
Yeah.
So, surprisingly, I'm actually surprised myself. I don't have a huge itch to like leave and start something on my own. Now, like if an opportunity or when an opportunity presents itself where same thing, if there's a limited downside and a huge potential upside, like if there was a stellar team starting a new, you know, type of business and great technology, I'll take that plunge any day.
Yeah. I mean, you're still not even 30 years old.
Yeah.
So you got some time to find something new.
Yeah.
But for now,
exactly.
For now, working for Launch Boom seems to be where you're happiest, right?
Yeah, I'm extremely happy. I have a lot of autonomy. I work 100% remote. Like last year, when, you know, I was telling you, Sammy, my wife, she was working in a hospital and then she switched over to biotech. And when she switched over to biotech, we worked remote, both of us. So we went to Hawaii for 2 months.
I saw that, yeah. And I was like, what's this guy doing?
We're doing it again in May, you know? So like, it's a good life. It's a good life.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it.
And no regrets.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this is kind of, for anyone out there, I don't know how many of you are into this, you know, listening out there, but, you know, it's the American dream, right? Your parents, you're first generation, right? First generation to go to college, and your parents came here with not a whole lot. Yeah. And then here you are, man, starting $1 million companies, selling $1 million companies, and working with, you know, the next great thing, right? You don't know what's going to happen, but that's the American dream, right?
Yeah, no, it's, I know Mark Cuban says this a lot, but like the American dream is definitely well and alive. And I think there's a lot of things that are wrong in our country and in the world, obviously, that we have to address. But yeah, my parents worked minimum wage jobs my whole life. Raising my 2 sisters and I don't even know how they did it in San Francisco. Like, I have no idea how they did it. I still don't understand it. And no matter how many questions I ask and what type of math I try to do, it just doesn't add up.
Somehow you had food on the table.
Yeah, somehow. And like everything that we have today, from like, you know, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Facebook advertising, resources like LaunchBoom, AP Bio at Gal, and UCSD, and like my parents working their butts off to like raise us. Like, definitely all this, I feel like, has been a huge gift. And like everything that we do and we have the privilege to do is like built on the shoulders of other people and giants, right? And I think like there's a lot of resentment, I feel. I don't even read the news, but I feel it. A resentment like in the community, on social media, certainly, for all the negatives that have happened. But I feel like the positives are very rarely recognized. And so, I think like you can still do whatever the heck he wants, you know, and literally. And I would encourage people to like just really open their minds up to like beyond what are the traditional things, and like really figure out, well, what it is, like that overlap of like what it is that you really enjoy and what is, you know, financially viable, and like pursue that.
Take a chance.
Yeah, cap your downside, but like take a chance for sure.
All right, man. It's fun talking to you.
Yeah.
If I ever have an idea, I'll throw it your way. But I don't know. For me, I've never really. This podcast is probably the biggest thing I built from the ground up. I mean, that's kind of one of those guys that I don't know. I just like working. I just like
Yeah.
Which I guess is fine for me. It's not for everyone, but
Right.
I've always just enjoyed working and seeing other people do stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're also really, really good at your job. So,
Well, it's fun. I think when you have fun doing something, it comes across. I think.
yeah. Yeah.
So
And like you've indirectly and directly, like you fueled my passion for aquariums,
that was fun,
sponsoring the aquarium club, driving me around. Like, what high school biology teacher drives a kid around to plant
you promised
meetups?
me we'd sell some shrimp. I was like, ooh, really? No,
Yeah.
that was fun. It was good times.
And we ended up, selling some crawfish.
Yeah, we did.
Right?
We did all right. We did all right.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming along, chatting with us. Do you want to, let's see, any way people get in touch with you, or what's the best way to, socials?
Yeah, I post not very often on Instagram. I'm at Ideas by Kevin. I do have a podcast as well.
Yeah.
It's old, but I think really great content. It's with friends of mine that I've done business with and learned a lot from, and mentors. It's called The Trailblazer Show. So you can find that at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and most of the podcast platforms.
Yeah.
And then, if you want to reach out, LinkedIn is probably the best way.
All right. Cool. All right, man. Thanks for coming by the pod, and we'll talk again soon.
But yeah, it was awesome. Thanks,
All right.
Mr. Chin.
Cool.